Good morning. Welcome to Laughing All the Way. Believe it or not, it is already October, and so we are here in Vermont and around New Hampshire area. We're actually wearing more clothes than we were last time. Not that you were aware of that, but I thought it would interest you to know that. And based on that, I have a guest today that is a good friend. She's been married for 27 years, has 8 children, 2 grandchildren. One son is serving time in the Marines, and she is a labor and delivery nurse. So she has a lot of experiences to talk about. And in a half hour, we're only probably going to get through about 10% of her life. So I'd like you to meet Teresa. Okay.
Hello.
Hello. I know. What do you say now? Right? So we've already talked on the way here, and we could go through so many. You have a multi-layered.
It would take a week.
It would take a week, and we don't have that much time. But I thought that what might be interesting is to talk about your parents or your birth, because that's a little unusual.
Okay. I'm adopted. What do you want me?
Well, what age were you adopted at, and how did that?
I was a baby.
Uh-huh.
7 months old, and my mom couldn't have any more children. She had already had two young sons, and wanted a girl. So here I am. Mm-hmm. Back when I was adopted, they showed you pictures of the babies that were available for adoption, and I was the first picture. And she didn't want to go any farther.
That's amazing.
So.
I remember, because I've talked to your mother over the years, and I remember that she said that when she saw you, she knew that you were hers. And I always think that's a wonderful story. So what was it like being adopted? I mean, did you feel any difference at all?
No, never. I always was just a part of the family and never felt any difference. Being adopted wasn't a big deal. It wasn't talked about all the time. I knew I was adopted. I could ask questions. Not that my mom had many answers about those questions, but it was just a part of life. And whenever I asked a question, it was answered, and it wasn't made a big deal of. It was just I was theirs, and that was that.
Mm-hmm. And knowing your parents, who are wonderful. And for me, they've been my example of how to be a grandmother. Because through the years, I watched the way that they responded to all of your children. And
they're pretty amazing.
They are amazing people. And the love that they have for you. I mean, they're just amazing. So if they're watching this, they're going to feel really good about this. But we know that we've told them this, too. So you got married at a young age.
Very young.
And had children.
Yes. Had lots of children.
Had lots of children. So you have
8.
8 children.
Yeah, 5 girls, 3 boys.
And the ages range from
25 to 7.
Oh my gosh. And so because of the 25-year-old, you have 2 grandchildren.
Yes, I have 1 married with 2 grandchildren, and my oldest son is a Marine, so he's not in the house anymore. So I have 6 still in the house.
Yeah. Wow. What is it like to have that many children?
Busy. Lots of laundry, lots of dishes.
But
once you get past a certain point, though, it's one more, So
you're numb.
It just one more isn't a big deal. It's not like you're adding 6 all at once. So when you get to a certain point and you have 1 more, it's just 1 more.
And you add it to the family.
When you think of 8 altogether, you wouldn't want 8 toddlers.
True. True. And they came one at a time, so that was helpful.
They came one at a time. I get asked that a lot. Did you have any twins? No, unfortunately.
No. Well, because I have 8 brothers and sisters, so I know the dynamics of what that is in a large family. And I loved having all those siblings. I really did. It meant a lot to me. It still does to this day. As a mother with all of those children, was there ever a time that, because today there's not people with that many in a family, was there ever a time that you thought, I just don't want any more kids?
No.
No.
I still get baby cravings.
Mm-hmm.
My youngest is 7 now, and occasionally I think, what it would be like to have a newborn again, That part's one of my favorites,
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine only doing it once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no.
Yeah. Well, now that you have the dynamics so of, you have grown children, still have teenagers, you have a lot of teenagers,
Lots
and
of
then you have the young one. What would you say as a mother has been the most difficult part,
The teenage years.
the teenage years?
They're so easy from 10 and under.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy stuff, you know, any of their squabbles or problems, it's all easy stuff. And once they're teenagers, their problems are more complicated. You know, they're more emotional, their, you know, attitudes, you know, influences from the world around them. You know, when
Yeah.
they're younger, they take you at your word.
Right.
And they don't test, you know, like they do when they're teenagers. So, yeah, I have 3 young women living in my house, 20, 17, and 16. And Cassidy's 11, so she's still at that good age. But, yeah, there's a lot of hormones running around my house.
Yeah, it is hard. Well, I remember when I was raising mine, I only had 3. But I do remember that I felt like in the first part of their life, you had rules or ways that you lived, and it was they just kind of followed along. But you got to some point, and it's common, it's normal for them to wonder and test and decide on their own if they're going to believe the things that you thought were of value or not. But it's a difficult time. You kind of hang on and hold on and hope a lot, pray a lot,
Right.
pray a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But they get on the other side.
I've only have a couple on the other side. So.
Yes, yeah. But I found that I have some really good friends and people that I'm proud of. They're very nice people. You know, on this side, they weren't that nice, and I probably wasn't very nice either.
I found with my oldest daughter that it's such a different relationship with her now that she's grown, married, and has her own children. You know, and it's beautiful.
Yes, yeah. There's an understanding. She understands what you have gone through and continue to go through.
Right.
Now the thing,
And even if she doesn't agree, it's still all good because she's going to go home to her own house.
yeah, right. When they live somewhere else, it's always really nice, isn't it? The other thing that I think is amazing about you is, like I said, I've known you for a long time, is you decided at some point that you wanted to go back to school. So explain how old you were and what brought that about.
I think I was 36 when I started taking classes. I was pregnant with Troy when I started taking classes. I had always kind of in the back of my head that maybe someday I would like to be a nurse, but I was always too busy. You know, I have lots of kids, and I don't know what made me start at that particular time, other than it just seemed like it was the right time. It was a lot of work. And I really came very close to giving up at the last little bit of it. I had 5 weeks left to go, and I was miserable.
Oh, gosh.
I had to travel to Bennington to do my clinicals.
So how long of a drive was that from your house?
I think it's like a 3-hour drive.
Oh, gosh.
I carpooled with 2 other girls from the middle of Vermont to go down there, and we stayed overnight Wednesday night and didn't come home until Friday night. So it was, 2 nights and 3 days away from my family. And
Troy was how old at that time?
not quite 2.
Oh.
And it was just very stressful. And if it wasn't for my husband saying, you only got 5 weeks left, you can do it. If I had been carpooling, I probably would have just drove home and never gone back. But I was stuck there, so I stuck it out and finally finished. And I wouldn't do it again, I have to say. I love my job. It's a great job. I think that's where God wants me. But it was so much stress in that last 5 weeks of school that it really wasn't worth it. I was like, this is not worth it.
And it was probably hard on everybody.
Yeah, I'm
at
sure
that
it
point.
was.
So what had happened prior that 5 weeks? It was 5 weeks that you had to do your in the hospital kind of shifts.
Right.
Is that what that? So prior to that, it had just been close to home that you did all the schooling, or how did that work?
Well, the first part of that last year, it was only 2 days down in Bennington instead of 3. And it was a little bit easier traveling It was
Probably
difficult.
not winter. Was it winter when you were traveling?
No.
Oh,
So when you go back to the next semester, it's January.
Oh gosh, yeah.
You know, and but anyway, you know, the 2 days was doable. I could handle it. It was stressful, but it wasn't too bad. The last semester really just took a toll on me, just traveling and being away from everybody, and you know, I felt like the weight of the world was on me.
Yeah.
I really came very close to just. If I hadn't had student loans, I probably would have just packed it in. But I was like, what am I going to do if I don't have a job?
But you did very well in school.
I did. Yep, I had my first year of nursing school, I got high honors. And my second year, I got honors.
That's wonderful. I remember because Lacey, your daughter, who is 20, is our house sitter. And I actually, I think it was episode 4 of your girls were on, which was fun. So we should tell people, if you want to watch that, you should. But she was saying to me how proud she was of you and how hard you worked, that you wouldn't settle for a low grade. And on the way here, we were talking about that thing about sometimes people are ready for college at a certain age, sometimes they're not. And I guess I'm curious, because you chose to get married and raise a family, in hindsight, do you think that you could have faced college at that age?
I think if I had gone to college at a younger age, I probably wouldn't have gone into nursing, and I'd probably be doing something that I don't enjoy. That's what I think.
Okay.
I think I would have went into, you know, some type of business type of stuff, because that's what I was doing in high school. And I can't see myself enjoying that right at this point in my life.
Right. So the nursing, though, you went in determined to be a labor and delivery nurse.
Yeah.
Well,
I really didn't think that that's where I would be at first. I thought I would have to do something else for a while until I could get into that position. I was very fortunate, you know, blessed, if you will, you know, that right after high school, right after college, Gifford Hospital, which is 7 miles from where I live, had an opening in their labor and delivery unit, and was willing to train me, a brand new nurse just out of school. So that's where I went, and I couldn't believe that I got my dream job right out of college.
I know.
So that was a big bonus and a huge, huge instrument in dealing with all that stress that I just went through.
Well, it probably made you think, okay, I got to this end, so all of that was worth it, because this is where you got. Now, I'm wondering, are you curious, or do you ever think that they possibly took you in because of your life experience? You had
Maybe
8 children, and they weren't all just easy births. I mean, you had a variety of experiences just in.
I've done it all.
You've done it all, because you've had cesarean, you've had stuck baby, and vaginal delivery. So you've pretty much done it all. Do you think that possibly that might?
It could be, and because I live in the community, I think they figured I was a good. That I was going to be there for a long time. That I wasn't just someone who's going to be there for a year or so and then move on to a bigger hospital.
Yeah.
That because I lived there and that was my community, that you know, that I would want to stay.
And that's
I
true.
do.
You do.
Yeah.
Okay. So what schedule? How often do you work, and what is your hour?
I'm a night nurse. I work either
Night, meaning the middle of the night?
Yes, all night.
Oh,
From
gosh.
like 7 p.m. to say 7 a.m. Or 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I usually do 2 12s and an 8 in a week. Occasionally I pick up extra shifts. But
And then you go home.
I go home and sleep.
Okay. And there's a house full of people.
Yes, we homeschool, so the
Okay.
kids are home. This year, we're trying out a new program where the kids are doing a lot of their schooling on the computer.
Okay.
So it's less teacher time for me. I'm not quite sure yet if I like the program that we're using. We'll see.
Well, it's early. It's only October. So you've been in it for a short time. So describe a typical day in the Dezan house.
A typical day.
if that's
I
possible.
arrive back home usually around 7:30 in the morning, depending on how the night went. And I go to bed. immediately. That's just my aim. At 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm just done.
Yeah.
So I go to bed. I usually sleep. I try to sleep at least till 1. When I first started, it was really hard to go to sleep and stay asleep in the daytime. Now I've found that dark curtains and a fan running are key.
Yeah.
So I go home, I go to bed, I get up around 1, I check on everybody's schoolwork, chores, things like that, making sure that they're all getting done. I have teenagers in the house, so they've learned to be pretty responsible and doing their stuff. And Wednesday through Saturday, I have my 2 grandsons at the house that my 16-year-old daughter, Candace, watches. And gets, she's the babysitter. She gets, paid and all that. So she's responsible for those 2 little guys, too. And she's the little mother. She really runs the show when I'm sleeping. So I get up, I do all that, check on their homework, making sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and laundry. Think about supper. I don't like to cook.
Yes.
So supper is always a trial for me. Sierra, my 17-year-old, she likes to cook. So a lot of the times I'll say, you're in charge of supper. In the springtime, in May, for the entire month of May, I let my teenagers know that they were responsible for making supper because I was too busy. My 13-year-old son plays baseball, and between baseball and Cassidy's softball and work and jury duty this year, I didn't have any free time. I think I was telling you there was only 2 days for the month of May that had nothing written on the calendar.
Oh, gosh.
So I told my teenagers, you guys are going to be responsible for suppers. I'll buy the food and it'll be in the freezer, but you guys are responsible for making it. They did. Sierra was usually the one in charge of making
great.
the meals.
That's great. Now, what does Joe do, your husband?
He is manager of Radio Shack at Welch's True Valley in Royalton. He's only been there about 2 years now, and I think he loves it.
Yeah.
He's a people person.
He's a people
guy.
person, yeah. And because before that, I know that he's done different things, but it always involved, even if he was working with the farmers and delivering AI or whatever, or heat dip, whatever, he was very personal.
Yes.
Very personal guy.
Yeah.
So he likes meeting people.
He really enjoyed working with the farmers we did it for a long time, but he was a farm boy growing up, so
Yeah.
He's really got that tie. He really likes, the ag business type of stuff, but it was time to move on.
And he has a large family. How
He's
many?
the oldest of 12.
The oldest of 12, and aren't there quite a few adopted children in that family?
Yes, his mom adopted 5.
5 of the 12.
And 3 of them are handicapped children.
It's astounding. So
Talk
for,
about a busy life. That was a busy life.
Yeah, but for Joe, it would to have 8 children. It's
Right.
not that much. He's just used to it.
Yeah.
And you, when you were growing up, were your brothers at home too, or were they older by the time you were adopted?
I have 3 older brothers.
Okay.
One is 4 years older than me, and I have one that's 6 years older than me, one that's 12 years older than me. So there's quite a bit of a difference. My youngest brother, we spent some time at home together, during high school years, that kind of thing. It's a blended family,
Yes.
so that younger brother was my dad's.
Okay.
From my dad's side, and I have twin older sisters as well, but they were grown up
Yeah.
by then. So, they were older. I was the baby.
You were the baby, right? Which is a whole other story in itself.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm amazed about you going back to school. I think that's astounding, and the schedule, because now we were talking on the way in that you have the homeschooling piece, the sleeping piece, and of course there are days that you don't work.
Right.
So those are normal days. Are you able to go back to
normal in the fact that I can get up and get everybody going at a much earlier time than normal, and really supervise their work. Although I try to keep my schedule almost the same as if I was working. Like, I stay up really late at night. I don't go to bed before 1 in the morning.
Well, how could you? Because how long have you been working at the hospital?
I've been working nights for 5 years.
That is so hard to believe. Wow.
Almost 5 years, yeah.
And you love it. What about that middle of the night? That hour, those hours? I
If
remember
it's
those
slow
hours.
and everybody's sleeping. You know,
Everybody,
there's
including the nurses?
There's no labors going on. 4 o'clock is the tough hour. That's when you're tired, and I'm always cold in the middle of the night. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the, if you're busy all night, you don't get tired until the end. And when it really hits you, 7 o'clock comes and my body knows that it's time to go to bed.
Because it's a long night. Now, when you work, are you there's another nurse always on with you, so there's always 2 of you on?
There is, unless it's a closed unit, like there's nobody there, then there's only 1 nurse, and we split a shift.
Okay. And when you do that, how often are you there where nothing happens?
Not often. More often in the winter. Versus are lower in the winter time, at least for us at Gifford. So,
Now, so as a labor and delivery nurse, what does that mean?
it means that I'm with the laboring woman from the time she comes in, and if she delivers within my shift, I'm with her through the delivery and the postpartum period.
So you're it. I mean, now Gifford, they have midwives and they have the OB. Now, if you're in with a midwife, is the midwife also there through the entire time, or does she come in for part of it and you do most of the laboring alongside?
Well, it depends on what's happening. If it's an active labor, the midwife is there in the hospital. Maybe not always in the room, but a lot of the time in the room. Not so much with the doctors. They come in when they're needed. The midwives are usually there. They're much more, what do I want to say, involved.
Involved, right.
If it's a doctor patient, the nurses are the ones that are much more involved. We're the labor coach.
Right.
We're the ones helping them cope.
Well, I know that you were there at the birth of my first granddaughter, and I know my daughter has known you since she was young. And I remember her thinking, will that be comfortable? And for her, it was a wonderful experience.
Good.
To have you there. and I've heard that along the line, that you are right up there at the top.
And, that working in a small community, you're going to meet people that come in and deliver. And it might be a little awkward at first, but that goes away quickly.
Yeah, well, they're in labor. They want to have the baby.
Right.
So we're almost done, and I have this tradition that I do is I give people little gifts, and usually this is really low budget, trust me. So it's not very exciting, but and a lot of times they're funny gifts. So I kept thinking, what could I give you that would be? I didn't want to give you something funny, because by gosh, you've got all those kids. I wanted to give you a reward. Okay, so I got you 2 Lindt chocolate candy bars. And orange and pistachio, this is really a commercial, right? And this is 70% cocoa almond brittle.
I'll have to hide those.
Because I thought, what do you give to somebody that her life is full and she doesn't get out much? So I thought the answer, of course, was chocolate.
Of course.
Okay.
Yes, definitely chocolate.
So was that good?
It is good.
Much better than a phony.
I'll have to hide it, though.
I know, you'll have to hide it. You'll have to put it in your coat. And they won't see this before you get home because they have to edit it.
Right.
So you're safe.
Yeah.
So
It'll be gone before they get to see
It'll be
it.
gone before we hit the car, maybe.
No, not that quickly.
No. So it was great having you on, Teresa. And you really are. You're an example. You really are.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay. And that's all. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Mom. And your parents you want to thank, because you know they'll see it.
Thank you, Mom.
Okay. And the
Dad.
kids. Okay. That's it.